All right, what is up? It's Jordan, and we are back with our first episode of We the South, where I get to preview the Texans AFC South matchups in the 2021 season. And week one, we've got the Jaguars, and there's no better expert and special guest for me to bring on today than Laurie Fitzpatrick. Laurie, I'm very thankful and happy that you're joining me today. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. The season's back. I'm ecstatic. Honestly, thank you so much for having me. I'm ready to, dive into week one.
Yes, exactly. I'm so excited. I'm glad you share my passion. Week one been way too long without football, and now we're finally back. But for those who do not know Laurie, first of all, what are you doing with your life? Go follow her. Her Twitter handle is right there on the screen, Laurie Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick right there. She is a former player in the IWFA, the WFA, and the LFL. Those are the correct leagues, right? I just want to make sure I got those right, Laurie.
Yeah, those were the three biggest I played in. There was a little spring league in there that I played. But yeah.
That's awesome. What position do you play?
Corner and running back. Yeah, nice. And I was a kick returner as well. They kind of didn't trust me at punt returner, so I don't know why, man. It seems like the funnest, right? To run back. It
does. You got the speed then, huh? Corner and running back and return game. Damn.
Yeah. No, it was fun, and the first year I kind of played more of a fullback role. We played kind of like a flex bone type of offense. Awesome. Where you where you play a lot where you block. So I was big, in the fullback position, and then I ended up getting some speed tosses, and then I got to the outside towards the end of my career. So
and then you can burst downfield when you get to that outside, that open space. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Love to get a former player's perspective. She's also a writer for the USA Today at Touchdown Wire and Draft Wire, and she is the Jaguars expert. I love Laurie, and she's one of the best Twitter followers out there, I think, because I personally like her so much because she sees the game the same way I do. It's about, breaking down the film and using that as your support. You're going to have your takes. I think she's very calculated and level-headed with her takes, but she'll always back it up with the film. And you guys know me, that's exactly how I like to do it. So super happy to have you on today, Laurie. And, I'm curious, as a former player, how has that kind of shaped your experience with how you now cover the NFL?
So it's really interesting because watching film is a big part of the game, and it's a lot of it's a lot of tedious work where you never have to watch the ball, right? You always have to pay attention to a certain guy, and you can pick out those tendencies. But the toughest thing about the NFL is the playbook being so large and so big, right? So it's really tough to kind of always make a prediction or something like that, because in the end it's objective, but like you said, the film always kind of backs it up. So it's given me another perspective, different than what the writers do nowadays. A lot of writers don't grind the film. They get the reaction, which is always good because it's a good conversation piece. So I started out not as a writer, just as a film grinder.
Yep.
So I think it's just given me that other perspective that not a lot of readers get nowadays, especially from a female. I want to gain more female followers, and hopefully they can kind of see the game the way that I explain it, or allow them to see it, other than what their boyfriends are doing or girlfriends or shouting in their ear.
Right.
So yeah, it gives me another perspective, and like you said, the film is my facts. That's what I back it up with, and not my opinion. I try not to anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. My slogan on this channel is "The film don't lie," because it doesn't. It's right there for you. How could it possibly? I think box score stats, they can lie, like you said. Journalists, writers, they are more opinion based, and it sucks the time that we're in with modern media, that how heavy it is in terms of clickbait and in terms of hot takes, right? Whether it's Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman on ESPN, they are literally just paid to say wild things, and it hurts the integrity of sports, in my opinion. But people like us who came up through watching film, grinding film, like you said, it's tedious, but it don't lie. That's the best way to look at the game for me. And personally, I love the game. I played it in high school, but analyzing the NFL level is always super, super exciting for me. So I'm glad that you share my beliefs in that. All right. Let's get into the game now. Week 1, the Jags heading to Houston. They are favored by, I believe it's 3 points. And that's kind of crazy because, this is no one's going to act like these two teams are heading to the Super Bowl. Jags had the worst record last year. Texans had the 3rd worst record. And the national media is already shitting on both of our teams before the season has started. And it hurts to see as a fan because obviously you never want to hear people talking bad on your team. And both of these teams have gone through so much change over this offseason that, in my opinion, I think it becomes difficult to truly predict the outcome of a game and a full season. So both these teams have new head coaches, new starting quarterbacks, and a lot of roster turnover throughout the rest of their roster. And so I guess the first thing I wanted to ask, Laurie, with Urban Meyer becoming your guys' new head coach, what are your initial thoughts on him?
Passion is really the first word that comes to mind. And so a lot of the players that were on the team last year said that they can instantly see a change in just the overall play and passion for the game. Because, as we saw, Urban Meyer was, an analyst after he was a coach. And so he loves the game. He loves anybody that, is a tryhard, right? He's a big Rudy fan, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so the toughest thing about that is Rudy didn't win Notre Dame games, right? He wasn't the reason why they won.
Right.
So that's my biggest concern is, you're bringing all these older players that you coached in college who weren't necessarily the guys that, showed out when they got to the NFL. They were really good players in college. And that's not going to win you games. But I think actually being in the trenches, this year, I think he's going to learn a lot early. So he's going to learn a lot from his mistakes. And I just expect a lot of changes to happen. Honestly, I'm a little concerned about the depth at wide receiver. We kind of got rid of a lot of guys. So that's a little bit of a concern. But the good side is the defense. I think he's kind of turned the defense around, and you can already see it in what we saw in preseason. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think your thoughts on Urban Meyer and the passion, I kind of echo that with our new head coach in David Culley. And I don't know how much you've kind of know about him and have kept up with him, but he's kind of this guy that he was a shock hire for all the Texans fans. He wasn't Eric Bieniemy. He wasn't Robert Saleh. He's not this guy who's known to have all these really good X's and O's. But what he is he's a culture guy. He's an energy guy. He's a passion guy. And all the new guys that we brought in, they all echo that about David Culley. And when you're talking about head coach, it's your leader. So he doesn't necessarily need to be, the best offensive mind, the best defensive mind. He can delegate tasks. And that's sometimes more important. So we'll see how these two rookie head coaches do. Definitely your point about learning is we'll see this first game. It might not be the prettiest, but not be the prettiest, but we've got a whole season and multiple seasons to grade them as coaches. So excited to see that. Join me on Thrive Fantasy, a daily fantasy sports and esports app for player props. The beauty of Thrive is in its simplicity. You can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Choose 10 out of the 20 available player props to build your lineup, and each prop is assigned a fantasy value for both the over and the under based on how likely it is to hit. Hit the most props and rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. Thrive has over $140,000 guarantees in prizes for NFL Week 1 and has already awarded over $4 million in total. Thrive features a $100K guaranteed contest, which is $20 to enter, and first place takes home $20,000. Use promo code TexansThoughts when you sign up today and you'll receive a 100% instant first deposit match up to $100. Download Thrive Fantasy on the App Store, the Play Store, or use my link in the description. Sign up and prop up today. Next up, I wanted to ask you, the golden boy, Trevor Lawrence, #1 overall pick for the Jaguars. He's supposed to be seen as, the savior to the Jaguars franchise, the franchise quarterback. How has he looked so far in training camp, in preseason?
So obviously the first 2 games weren't ideal. He really only had like 1 or 2 passes that were kind of like, gave you the eye emojis. Otherwise, it wasn't great, to be honest. It didn't look like the receivers got much separation. But on top of the separation, sometimes it's the scheme that doesn't allow the receivers to get open. And then on the other hand, you have the offensive line that wasn't really holding up. So Trevor got sacked. Literally, his first play in preseason was a sack.
Ugh.
So that wasn't really great, to be honest, but by week 3 in preseason, he was firing on all cylinders, man. Like he went, I think, like 11 for 12 in his last preseason game. It seemed like the offense kind of came together, and they seemed like they ran a little bit more motion, so there was some more misdirection, and it allowed Trevor to kind of read the defense a little bit. So he was able to look off some receivers. He was able to go through his reads properly. So yeah, I think preseason wasn't. I think he progressed, which is good. He didn't just do really well in week 1 in preseason, and then by the time week 3 came around, you're like, I don't know. I think it's good that you kind of start off slow and then you get better. It's not so much a up and down roller coaster. It's kind of like a steady incline, and I think that's gonna be the story of the season. I think it's gonna be a steady incline, and I expect him to throw a little bit. I think the fans are gonna hope that they throw more, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you next. Is rookie quarterback, and we'll talk about the offensive line and some injuries that they were dealing with in preseason. But rookie quarterback, you don't want to just throw them to the fire, right? And so do you expect offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell, right? Do you expect him to kind of keep the training wheels on Trevor for a little bit, at least for week 1 probably? Or
I wouldn't necessarily say like training wheels. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. But I think they're going to try to get explosive plays out of him. Okay. So I think in the beginning they'll run some screens, right? And then they'll maybe, run some like first quick screens where the wide receiver just comes off the line and catches. And then I think some bubble screens where they kind of go out, and maybe some running back bubble screens where they kind of go all the way out on the flat. And then I think they're going to kind of throw some deep passes. And I think they're going to test Trevor early on him, like moving the secondary with his eyes. I think they're going to kind of see what he has. And I think we're gonna see some deep passes, some shots downfield. So I think it'll be a little bit of both the training wheels in the beginning of the game. But I think they'll take some shots deep downfield with Trevor for sure.
That's really interesting that you say. Yeah, I think in terms of quarterback development and easing rookies in, I feel like something that the Texans did with Deshaun Watson, and I think most teams should do with their rookie quarterbacks, is kind of trying to create similar environments to their college success. And Clemson's offense was very heavily dependent on screens to get the quarterback in rhythm, get him easy passes, and then you go take those shots later. And so I think you're absolutely right. I mean, that would definitely be the best way to make Trevor Lawrence comfortable.
Yeah, no, and I also think that the run game is going to be important. So if they're able to establish the run and make sure the defense stays home, like doesn't try to anticipate like the throws. I think maybe like if they start off with some draw plays, like, and it keeps the defense on their toes, so they don't. Yeah, they're going to rush Trevor, and then that leaves the field wide open for James Robinson to go through the A gap. So I think the run game is going to force the defense to stay home, and it will alleviate some pressure from the offensive to the offensive line. So Trevor has some more time. So definitely. Yeah, that's something that this Texans defense with new defensive coordinator Lovie Smith, they've really prided themselves on being aggressive and trying to get after the quarterback. And sometimes that can be to a fault, because we saw in the preseason, they got burned by screen passes. They gave up 2 touchdowns
on screen passes in particular. And so that's a great way to slow down a pass rush along with the run game, as you mentioned.
Before you move on, don't worry. The Jaguars got burned by a couple of screen passes this preseason. It was bad. So if there's one thing that the Texans hope for, it's that their team runs some screens on the Jaguars defense.
Okay, that's good. That's very good to know. That's very good to know. Hopefully we can just have the entire game will just be screens versus screens. All right, so the next thing I want to bring up is the Jaguars offensive line. I think I'm a big guy on the trenches. The trenches is how you control the game, how you win the game. And the Texans defensive line has looked pretty solid in preseason, definitely better from last year. We forced 10 turnovers in 3 preseason games, which was more than all last year. We got 11 sacks in those 3 games. And one of the things that Texans fans will bring up is that, you know what, we were doing it against backups, so it's not as impressive. And that's definitely has its point. But then when you look to the matchup with the Jaguars and the injuries that they've dealt with across the offensive line, and maybe they're lacking a lot of continuity because they haven't had those reps in preseason, we might be able to take advantage of that. Or is the Jaguars offensive line and the injuries and lack of continuity that they might have, is that kind of a worry for you?
So I hope that your viewers and listeners don't think I'm being biased or anything, right? But I'm gonna say no, it's not a worry for me, but it's definitely a legitimate argument for someone that has watched football or have watched this preseason, right? The offensive line looked really shaky. But to be honest, this offensive line they've actually been playing together for the last 3 years. And there's been some continuity between years. And so I think it would be a concern in preseason, and it was a concern for Trevor Lawrence's preseason, because you want him to kind of build a good rapport or good rapport with his wide receivers, and you can if nobody can hold the damn line, right? So I think that was an issue for the passing game in preseason, but honestly, I'm not too worried about it because these guys are all going to be healthy week 1.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, so I know Norwell missed a few some time in preseason. Linder, I think he got injured in week 2. I heard some things about Cam Robinson, but it looks like he's good to go. So you go.
No. Yeah. With everything you're saying, right, I'm a little concerned about Linder, right?
Yeah.
So his knee, he had something called, oh my gosh, it's like a tendonitis type of thing.
Okay.
I forget the name. It's something crazy anyway. So even if I had the name in front of me, I'll probably But it's basically like an overuse of your knee, and so you get little tears in it, which is terrible, right?
Yeah.
It's horrible. And he's one of the best offensive linemen that the Jaguars have. Seriously. But Urban Meyer says it's not a big deal. They're all ready to go week 1. But the reason why I'm not too worried about it is Shatley has been taking a lot of snaps at center, and he's actually been doing pretty good. And so if for any reason Linder is not able to play throughout the whole season, I think Shatley and Trevor they've got a lot of reps together, where I think the transition would be seamless if anything was to happen with Linder. But in terms of continuity, what you're saying is really important. I think over the last 3-4 years, how these guys have been the same.
That's true.
I think that is not a concern, just overall. But definitely a good point though, right? Because in preseason it wasn't looking too good.
No, and that's the thing, is just I think what I was trying to focus on and is what you brought up with Trevor Lawrence and trying to build that confidence in preseason. But the fact that they're all going to be healthy week 1, it's definitely good. Sorry, you go for it.
Yeah. No. But the Cam Robinson thing, man, I'm kind of worried, right? So he didn't play preseason week 3. And it was because he had a little injury or something the day of. And so they played Walker Little, which was their draft pickup this year, and he did terrible. Honestly, he was kind of getting better as the preseason, week 3 happened. He was kind of staying where he was playing how he was supposed to play, like as a rookie, but it's not a guy that you want in there for your rookie quarterback. So I think Cam Robinson is a big need. And I hope he's good to go, like, for the whole season. Urban Meyer says everybody's good to go week 1. But that's definitely a concern. Maybe the next time when the Texans play the Jaguars, I don't know what week it is that they play next. But if he's not in there, that'll be a good sign for the Texans.
Yeah, so he's the blindside protector for Trevor Lawrence. So
yeah,
definitely want to keep that clean for the rookie. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is in terms of the Jaguars, sticking on the Jaguars offense, you talked about earlier that the wide receiver depth might be a bit of a reason for concern, but I'm kind of curious, who are the weapons that the Texans really need to focus on the most and stop?
So, DJ Chark is a guy that really didn't, like, last year he didn't play as good as we expected him to, but I believe they were kind of like tanking in a way too, which you don't really want to say that ever. And so he didn't really need to, like, care, to be honest. But even when it's something that is supposed to happen, a player always, like, regresses during that time. So I think he has a lot to show. He's definitely a weapon, dude. His size and speed and, like, his 50-50 ball is definitely, like, he has solid hands, man. Like, he's a really good wide receiver. I would say, though, like, Marvin Jones would be the biggest weapon that I think any defense has to worry about in terms of beating them over the top. Now, Laviska Shenault is a weapon that they need to gang tackle. Oh. So I think those two guys, Laviska and Marvin Jones, are going to be two guys that, it's going to be a repetition that they have to watch them, like, as a defense. The secondary is really going to have to pay attention to those two guys.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for the Texans. The secondary, I wouldn't call it a strength of ours, and especially week 1, Bradley Roby is still going to be serving a suspension that he had from last year for PEDs. So we're going to be missing our cornerback 1. And so that's why I kind of thought that, DJ Chark he's primed for, a bounce back year for sure, and someone that you always have to keep attention on and send your cornerback 1 towards, in my opinion. But yeah, I like the starting 3 wide receivers for the Jaguars. It pains me to say it, but I do. Marvin Jones is the epitome of consistency over his entire career. So I think that was an underrated pickup to go get a veteran guy for your rookie that he can trust. And then Laviska Shenault, man, oh my goodness, this guy's a pain in the ass to tackle. You need, like you said, gang tackle him, 2, 3, 4 guys. Everyone's got to send his way because he's built like a running back, and he turns into a running back once he gets the ball. So definitely worried about him. And then I think, I talk about weapons and receivers, but I think also James Robinson is someone that the Texans can't forget about. You talk about in the screen game, in the run game, and I think he's a great runner, but also a 3-down running back. And I think he can be someone that the Texans have always struggled to cover running backs out of the backfield. So can't forget about him either.
Yeah. I think that, Jamal Agnew and the newest pickup, I don't want to say his name is Tyrone if it's not Tyrone. Tyron Johnson, right? Tyron.
Yeah, Tyron, I think.
Tyron Johnson, dude, what a pickup that was from the Chargers, man. It's the speed, right? So I think it'll take those two guys, Agnew and Tyron Johnson. I think they'll actually take some reps from James Robinson in terms of, like, passing to the backfield or out of the backfield. I think you'll see some 2-back sets. Some guys kind of coming out of the backfield, and Laviska is one of those guys too to kind of come out from a 2-back set, because I don't really like any of the other running backs, but you can't, like, overload James Robinson, right?
No,
so
that's true.
I think he does have a hard time kind of fighting the hole. He'll kind of, like, get, like, just run behind, like, all these guys, and he'll only get like 2 or 3 yards. But I think you'll see some 2-back sets and them kind of passing out of the backfield as well to kind of take some reps from James Robinson.
Okay, that'll be interesting because the Texans, like I said before, they've always struggled. They've always had kind of old school linebackers. your thumpers between the tackles. Their priority, stop the run. And of course that is super important, but nowadays with how modern offenses are changing and evolving, they're trying to attack those linebackers. And so I'm worried about that aspect. And this offseason, we've seen a change in the Texans linebackers getting more athletic. And they've gotten a lot of those backups who are more athletic, guys like, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Joe Thomas, but their starters, Zach Cunningham and Christian Kirksey, are still guys who are more run defenders. And when you're playing in Lovie Smith's Tampa 2 zone, it's not going to look pretty. So I think that's something to look out for.
Yeah, I think they'll do a good job in stopping the run. It's going to be tough. James Robinson likes to run in between the tackles. He's not an outside speed guy. So they'll be able to stop him there. And that's why I think a lot of the fans were looking forward to ETN, because he was going to be the speed guy. And now they have to, figure it out pretty much, because Duke Johnson and oh my gosh, the other running back there, what's his name? Carlos Hyde. I don't think there's no speed guys in the backfield there.
No.
So it's a little bit of a concern. I think the Texans will do a good job, that pressure up the middle, and they'll force Trevor to throw it. And then when you bring that pressure, I think it's going to put Jacksonville in a tough position on what to do in this game when the Texans stop the run.
Yeah, I think kind of overarching theme of this game is it's going to be a very defense heavy game. And some people don't like to watch those types of games. They call them ugly, but I love them. I love those types of games. Defense wins championships. And so I think on both sides of the ball, I think potentially both offenses might struggle. And it's a mixture of new offenses, but also that both defenses, that's the strong point of these teams. And so I think you're absolutely right. The formula for the Texans, stopping the Jaguars offense, stuff the run, force Trevor Lawrence into those third and longs, then go get after him. Whether it's rushing 4, whether it's blitzing, change up the looks, because at the end of the day, he's a rookie quarterback, and rookie quarterbacks tend to struggle when you throw a bunch of different looks at them. And he's the golden boy. He's an amazing player out of college for sure, but at the end of the day, he's a rookie. And so I think that's where the Texans can, make their advantage.
White Jesus.
Exactly. So we talked about the offense, Jags offense versus the Texans defense. Let's move over to the other side of the ball. And you said in the beginning, but the Jags defense is where you're a bit more confident in the team, I feel like. And so talk to me about, the strengths on that Jags defense.
So the strengths, no doubt, is the run defense. Honestly, they were last, and you said, they were 31st. And so I think their strengths on the defense would be stopping the run. In terms of, the second line of defense, Miles Jack runs all over the field. He's not a guy that a defense is built around. Okay. So he's like a gang tackle type of guy. He can make solo tackles, but he's going to jump on the guy's back so that he slows them down, so the rest of the team makes the rest of the tackle. So he's going to get there first, but he's not making unbelievable plays. The unbelievable plays would be after he gets your hands on you, you better make sure you hold on to the ball, because he's going to try to strip you.
True.
But he's not a hard-nosed hitter, and they don't have an unbelievable safety out there either.
Yeah.
So they have Rayshawn Jenkins, who's been probably their best overall defensive player in terms of blitzing and just being in the right place at the right time. I would say Miles Jack and Rayshawn Jenkins, especially in the secondary, and then on the outside, CJ Henderson, man, he's been so good for them, just consistently with tackling, with just being at the right place in the right time, passes defense. Just, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to break out. He'll have he'll be the comeback player.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think some of the reports that I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like, as most rookie cornerbacks do, it seemed like he struggled a bit as a rookie, but he definitely, has shown a lot of improvements through this next year. So I'm interested in the strength of the Jags defense. It's really interesting because, like you said, they finished 31st in DVOA, one of the few statistics that I actually, use and trust. They finished 30. They finished
That's
31st in run defense, right?
And no, so, it's like PFF, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
What those things are,
PFF, I use it when they praise my favorite players, and I hate them when they call them shit.
Yeah, because like they'll put a string of like different stats, and they'll plus, and then that equals this rating, and you're like, wait, what does that mean? So I just think that was funny that you said that. But
no,
continue.
For sure.
Sorry.
That's why we're film people. For sure. But yeah, you said, I think the run defense, I'm looking at the Jaguars depth chart, and the defensive line, I think it's pretty underrated. I mean, you got Josh Allen on the outside. You've got sophomore Devon Hamilton. I was a big fan of him out of Ohio State. And then I believe he's a new addition, Roy Robertson-Harris. He's, I think, a very underrated guy to look out for. I think he's going to stuff the hell out of the run and be basically an immovable object. Would you agree with me on that one?
1,000%, man. Yeah. Like, and even in the preseason, he was like getting his hands on guys that like, oh man, they're gonna break this one. You could see it, and then out of nowhere, like Roy Robertson, even though he's like gigantic, he was still, he was making plays almost every single snap. So yeah. I think him and one guy that you may have forgot, Malcolm Brown.
Yes,
dude, he is doing fantastic too. So I think both of those guys, and Devon Hamilton kind of coming up as still like a new guy in a way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did good last year, but now the game's kind of slowing down for him, right?
Yep.
So I think he's gonna make a pretty good show for this upcoming season. But Roy Robertson-Harris, Malcolm Brown, and then you have a new guy, Jay Tufele, from Miami. I think he was from. Or no, that was Jaheed Ward. Oh, no, Jaheed Ward is from Baltimore. Jay was a new pickup from the draft this year, and man, he's been playing pretty well. So I think the run defense is completely turned around. They did a 180 from last year. I think they're gonna finish like, I can't make any like predictions like top 10 or anything like that, because you don't know. Like the whole team is kind of new in terms of defense.
Exactly.
But I think they'll be up there, man. It's like, it's exciting because you're used to seeing teams run all over. Now I'm worried about the passing defense.
Okay, let's talk about the passing defense, because actually one point I'll make on the run game, because I think it's so important. I brought it up first because that's the formula for the Texans to win this game, is they need to be able to run the ball. Their offense, I mean, they got Tyrod Taylor back there. We know the passing offense isn't going to be anything amazing. So they need to run the ball, and that's how it's going to make Tyrod's job easier. So that's why I bring that up. And that's why, to be honest, I'm not too in love with this offensive matchup for us, because run defense, like you said, you got a good blend of veterans, proven veterans, and rising young guys. So I'm a bit worried about that. But let's talk about the passing game, Texans passing offense versus the Jags passing defense, because they ended up, what was it, 24th in pass defense, defensive DVOA last year, and they made some good additions. Shaq Griffin, the cornerback from Seattle, that's a good addition, and you have him and CJ Henderson on both sides of the cornerback. I think that's great. But I think in terms of weak points, like you mentioned earlier, safety, and then potentially I think nickel corner could be another area for the Texans to attack. How do you view the Jags pass defense this year?
Yeah, I would agree. With basically, everything you said. So the nickel corner position is a little tough, right? So Trey Herndon or Tyson Campbell, we saw Tyson Campbell get burned deep. So that's a concern. That's a concern if they're able, if he's able to handle someone one-on-one. And I'm not going to lie. I think the Texans need to air it out in order to win the game. Because I really love the Jaguars run defense, man. And I think the upside to the run defense, if you're a Texans fan and you're listening and watching this, I think the only thing is maybe like, since it's kind of like a new run defense and they have so many new guys in there, you never know. But I'm more, I'm nervous about this passing defense. So Jaguars don't know if they're going to start Andrew Wingard or Andre Cisco at safety.
Okay.
So that's like kind of up in the air. Andre Cisco he's from Syracuse, right? So he's a rookie, and like safety is one of the hardest positions to play, like especially as a rookie, right? It's like the quarterback of the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people say that the linebacker is the quarterback of the defense, but you're the last line of defense as the safety. So if they get by you, then they can possibly score. So I'm really concerned on the Jaguars playing zone, because if they have to switch at all, I think communication's going to be really tough for them, especially if they don't even know who's going to be the starter. Like that's really concerning to me. So that's why I say I think the Texans have to air it out in order to kind of win this game, because it's such a question mark at safety. Who's going to play it? I don't think Rudy Ford is anybody that anybody should worry about. He's kind of unproven. Like he played for the Eagles, and he's a really good special teams guy. He makes tackles in special teams, but I don't think he's like a guy who's gonna be really good like at the safety position. So it's tough, man. I think Andre is really good. He can make the tackles, and he can get interceptions. But in terms of making the decisions on where to go, like mid route in zone, and if there's any switches and things like that, like if you're forcing a safety to make a decision, like because how sometimes the wide receivers will kind of like one guy will go left, one guy will go right, and the safety has to make a decision on which guy to go with.
For sure.
And they have to talk. I think there may be some times where they're gonna botch a play, and then your quarterback's gonna have to make a decision. He's gonna have to get back there, and it's gonna be tough, dude. So the safety position is kind of up in the air. We don't really know what's gonna happen, and then lastly at the cornerback position right now, I like CJ better than Shaquille Griffin, which is crazy, right? Because he was such a big signing, but he was getting burned in the preseason, like bad. So like I was talking to some Seahawks, writers and analysts and everything, and he was always a guy that was, you weren't really sure what you were gonna get out of him. Were you confident if he had to stick someone 1-on-1? Like 50% of the time, you weren't really sure. So which is like, it was so concerning for me to hear. I think like CJ is like stone cold, man. I think he's a really good player. But I'm nervous for Shaquille Griffin. Like one game he may do great, and the next he may get burned. So I'm a little nervous about him. Chris Claybrooks, I'm a little nervous about him too. That's what I'm saying. This secondary, man,
a lot of people is
tough,
about.
Man. It's really tough. Yeah, and just circling back to what I said about the safety, if you don't know who's gonna start, I think that's an issue.
For sure. Let's start with the cornerbacks. It was interesting to me that you said that Shaq Griffin is maybe underperformed a bit because you guys threw a lot of money at him, big signing, like you said. And do you know if they're viewing him as the cornerback one, or are they viewing CJ as the cornerback one, really?
I think Shaquille is quarterback, corner one. I mean, it may change throughout the season though, because it seems you don't want to hold that much weight on preseason, right? But if I were to hold weight on preseason, it would be CJ would be number one, man, because he's been really good. But Shaquille is he's number one right now. He's
number one. Okay, so using that for just week one for now, then it looks like he would match up probably most with Brandon Cooks for the Texans. And Brandon Cooks is, speedy guy, has been reliable all his career. So if you're saying that number one, Shaq Griffin is not looking too good, and number two, the safeties are a bit of a concern, then I think this could be Brandon Cooks, coming out party for sure. I think him getting over the top and being able to attack Andre Cisco, who I was kind of up and down on out of Syracuse because he's so volatile. And with safety play, you can't be volatile. Like the number one thing is be dependable, because you're that safety net, right? But with Cisco, one game he's going to have 2 interceptions. The next game he's going to get burnt deep 2 times, 3 times and give up a touchdown, right? So I think as a rookie, for sure, if he starts, he's definitely someone you want to target for the Texans. And then in terms of, basically stay away from CJ Henderson is what I'll say. If Shaq Griffin is going to guard Brandon Cooks, then CJ Henderson is probably going to lock Chris Conley, former Jaguar, out of the game.
Interesting, right? So Chris Conley, he came from the Jaguars, and maybe he'll have a little bit to say about, he can help the Texans out in terms of, tendencies and stuff. Clay Brooks was on the team, I think, when he was, and CJ was, I'm pretty sure, that might be it, or Trey Herndon. So hopefully Trey Herndon's like not out there, because I think Conley could probably attack him. I think that's going to be a cool thing to watch, though. Conley versus old team.
I think so as well, because he's gone up against in practice those guys for a year, and some of them multiple years. So he knows, like you said, like maybe no cornerback is perfect, and especially some cornerbacks are better at certain things, and other things better at stopping certain routes, better at stopping certain wide receivers than others. So if Conley kind of has that inside knowledge already, he can share that. He can not only use that for himself, but share it with Brandon Cooks and the other wide receivers. And I think one matchup that I'm going to really have my eyes on, like you said, is the nickel cornerback position, whether it's Trey Herndon, whether it's Tyson Campbell, the rookie, whether it's Chris Clay Brooks. The Texans are going to be running their new wide receiver, Anthony Miller, from the Bears. And he's someone we're really excited about, because he got freed from the Bears. He got freed from Mitchell Trubisky and Andy Dalton and Matt Nagy. And so now he can live up to his second round billing, hopefully. And he's healthy. He had a shoulder injury in preseason, but he returned this week. So I'm really interested to look at that matchup. And I think Tyrod should look to lean on him and attack the passing game there.
I think, like you said, I think it's going to be a defensive type of game. I think whoever doesn't play well on defense is going to win the game. And it's kind of funny to say that, like, if you don't miss, then you make it type of thing. But honestly, I think it's going to be all about the defense. I'm a little excited to see how Tyrod does, under center for the Texans. I think it's going to be interesting. But overall, it's going to be a defensive game for sure.
It's definitely going to be a defensive game. If you like sports betting, definitely smash the under on this one. I think it's going to be a defensive focused game for sure. And I think you brought up Tyrod. He's officially named the starter this week, even though there's really no doubt it wasn't going to be Deshaun Watson. But Tyrod, I think it's interesting because his strengths don't really play well to the Jaguars' weaknesses. Like we talked about the secondary, going deep, attacking those safeties. That's not really who Tyrod is. So I hate to say it as a Texans fan, but for Jaguars fans, feel a little bit more confident that, yes, you might have some concerns in the secondary, but Tyrod has never really been that guy to attack deep and pick apart a defense like that. The Texans are still going to heavily lean on the run game, and that might play into the Jaguars' hands a little bit. But want to end it off with our game prediction. I'm sure we're both going to pick our own teams for the win. I'll say that I think the Texans are going to get the dub. I think it will be close. I think it'll be a one-score game, either by a field goal or a touchdown in the fourth quarter, but I think they're probably going to take it. I'll say like 20 to 17, something like that. What's your prediction for the game, Laurie?
So I think your last statement kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of Tyrod and how he doesn't really match up well against the Jaguars defense, because I think their run defense is really going to show up and show out. I think they're going to have some sacks, and I don't mean to be what is it, not biased, but whatever. But I think I think the Jaguars are gonna win this game, and I think it's gonna be close, like you said. I don't think it's gonna be high scoring. I just looked at the over under, and I think it's 44. So I'd say definitely take the under, because I think it's gonna be something like 14 to 17 Jaguars, or 17 to 21 Jaguars, and it's going to be really close. Like you said, I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. And is the rookie going to pull it out, or is he going to SHIT the bed? And will the Texans be able to just run the clock out? So I think it's going to be interesting.
That's the thing. That's where I ultimately picked the Texans, is that it's a veteran quarterback in Tyrod, and it's a rookie quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And of course, if I'm going to pick a quarterback for the next 10 years, of course, I'm going to pick Trevor Lawrence. But first start for him, it could be rough, especially going up against an established defensive coordinator like Lovie Smith and him preaching all about turnovers. And so I think the Texans, their key to the game, you know, force as many turnovers as possible, take advantage of a rookie quarterback's mistakes. And that's how they're going to win this game, because I'm not as confident on the offensive side of the ball, but if you get the turnovers, set them up with better field position, that's how you're going to give them the best method for success. So that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much, Laurie, for joining us today. We'll have to come back again for the next Jags matchup. Definitely you guys follow her on Twitter and check out her work. She's one of the best writers, I think, out there. All of her stuff will be linked in the description. But yeah, that's going to do it. Take care, guys.